Hello everyone and happy Tuesday, I think. Yeah, it takes me a minute sometimes to remember what day it is, but I hope everyone is having a fantastic day and are enjoying the summer weather. It's gotten really nice and warm and sultry here in Massachusetts, so I am very excited about that. And welcome Stacy and Shelley and Jen. Lovely to see you here. So today I wanted to do a little bit of an intro of Ayurveda, and I'm also here to answer any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions, you can jump right in. So I'm here to answer questions about Ayurveda, and also I wanted to tell you a little bit about this beautiful ancient system of healthcare, because I really believe that Ayurveda is an opportunity to reconnect to our bodies, reconnect to our feminine essence, and really reclaim our health, reclaim our radiance. And even though this system is 5,000 years old, it is still more relevant and more needed than ever. So I want to talk about Ayurveda and give you kind of a bird's eye view of how it works and how specifically it can help you. Because I know if you're kind of dipping your toes into Ayurveda, it can sound interesting, it can sound nice, but at the end of the day, we want to feel better, right? We want to feel comfortable in our own skin. And there's actually a word for that in Sanskrit, and it's called svasthya. And often here in the West, when we think of health, we think of the physical health, like how am I eating, how am I moving my body? And yes, that is important, but it's also more than that too. Svasthya is your physical health, but it's also your emotional, mental, sexual, creative, spiritual, because we need all of that, as I am sure you know, to feel truly healthy. So really looking forward to diving into that. And I also want to tell you about the 4 phases of life. So these are called the 4 Ashramas, and these are really important to consider as we navigate life, because we have innate psychic drives to do one thing, to lean in a certain direction. And when we don't honor those drives, that's when we're going to start to feel uneasy. And we're actually going to see dis-ease, because our body, our mind want to do one thing and we are doing something else. So what Ayurveda is all about is getting back aligned to the natural rhythms of your body, the cycles of your body, and the natural rhythms of nature. So I always, loved, hello Josephina, yay, nice to see you. I always like to tell women, because we all do this, and I do it too. Like, we'll be like, oh, I need to spend more time in nature. I need to get back out in nature more. And yes, I'm sure we all do, right? We spend more time looking at screens than sunsets. But the important thing to remember is that you are nature. So whatever is going outside, if it's hot and steamy and sultry outside, you might be noticing you're getting a little hot and steamy too. If it's cold and frigid and dry, you might be getting cold, frigid, and dry. So Ayurveda reminds us that we are nature. And when we start to flow with these natural rhythms, we start to get more energy, because we're no longer going against the grain, right? So if you can think of it a little bit as if you're swimming against the current, that's hard, right? That's a lot of work. But if you're swimming with the current, you get there a lot faster. So that's what Ayurveda does, is it teaches us to swim with the current of our own body, of our own innate rhythm, as well as nature. So it doesn't feel like we are constantly going uphill. And the other really beautiful thing about Ayurveda is that we get to take back accountability, responsibility for how we feel at any given time. So yes, it does require self-awareness. It does require you to look and check in with your body. I'm always hand on the belly, hand on the heart. How am I feeling today? What's coming up for me? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel heavy? How's my digestion? So we can make skillful decisions of what we need to feel better. So that is what we are going to be discussing today. All right, so what is Ayurveda? Ayurveda is an ancient Indian health system. It's over 5,000 years old that looks to optimize health by holistically caring for your body, mind, and for your spirit. Now, if we look at the Sanskrit word of Ayurveda, Ayur means life, and Veda would mean knowledge or science. So it really means the science of life, the science of living. How can you live optimally? I always like to think of it's like creating this everlasting radiance from the inside out. Now, with Ayurveda, we're really looking to create this optimal environment for health. So how it differs from Western medicine, and I still have all of my Western doctors, I'm not saying don't use those, I really think it's a beautiful complement, but when often we go to the doctors, we go because something is wrong. So a lot of the doctors in the West, it's like sick care management. How do we fix this? Okay, my skin is too red, how do I fix this? I haven't gone to the bathroom in days, how do I fix this? Ayurveda is more of like health management. How do we create the conditions for optimal health? Now, I like to give this example. So there was one day I went to the dermatologist. I've been a huge sun worshiper. Well, not all of my life, but at least the first 25, 30 years of my life. So I see the dermatologist quite a lot. And I actually went there and I thought I was looking okay that day. And he was like, oh, your rosacea is really, it's really like inflamed. Like, let me give you something for that. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just, I've been a little bit stressed lately. Let me see if I can manage my stress, try to go to sleep a little bit earlier. Maybe I've been eating spicy foods. Maybe I should cut out alcohol altogether. And he's like, oh, well, don't worry about that. I can just give you an antibiotic, right? And then we are just treating. We're just treating the symptoms, but we're not getting at the underlying causes. Where with an Ayurvedic perspective, it'd be like, well, are you under a lot of stress? Are you getting a good night's sleep? What's your diet look like? So we're going to understand the cause, because what I like to explain to my students, to my clients, is that your symptoms are your body's way of saying, I don't like something you're doing. You're not living in alignment. And what I love about this is that it's not just you're doing something that's giving your body a reaction, but often the things that we're doing aren't good for our spirit, aren't good for our mind as well. So what does that mean? Stress is the number one disruptor of women's health, and particularly hormonal health too. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get into all of that today, but when we're doing things that aren't in alignment, whether it's drinking too much, staying up too late, we're dealing with stress. Our body is going to have symptoms, and these aren't symptoms that we just want to mask, we want to put a Band-Aid. We want to get to the root cause. So we not only feel better physically, but we are living in alignment. We are on a path to become the woman that we are meant to become. So hopefully, let me know if that makes sense. Molly, any good Ayurvedic books to suggest? Yes, I do. So Healthy, Happy, Sexy by Katie Silcox is a fantastic book, and that gives you a really great overview of Ayurveda. So Healthy, Happy, Sexy by Katie Silcox, and Everyday Ayurveda by Kate O'Donnell, and she has a few other fantastic ones as well too, will be a really great intro to eating and eating aligned with the seasons. So when you start to dive into Ayurveda, you'll see even a lot of the cookbooks are aligned to the seasons. Yay, Josephina, and you're learning. Yes, Josephine has been one of my students. She's been in Radiant Goddess and one of my clients. So happy to hear that you are practicing all that you are learning. So, as I was saying, our symptoms, we don't want to just mask them, but yes, Ayurveda does have ways to alleviate symptoms. So whether it's skin or digestion with herbs, with spices, so beautiful natural ways to alleviate symptoms, but we're really looking at the cause because our body is communicating to us. And that's a really big mindset shift too that I like people to understand, because often, we think of the body, and especially I know if you are here with me right now on Instagram or if you're in my community, it is likely that you are on a spiritual path or a personal development path. But sometimes on the spiritual path, we might be like, oh, well, this is just my body. This is transient. I'm going to focus on my spirit because my spirit is everlasting. And while that is true, your body is no less important than your spirit. It is your gateway. It is your vehicle in this earthly realm. And according to Ayurveda, you are divine. So you are image of the divine, your higher power, whoever that is to you. So Ayurveda would say it is your responsibility to really treat your body with the utmost care so you can have a fulfilling, meaningful, pleasure-filled, joyful life, and so you can fulfill your dharma. So to me, self-care isn't just like a biohack, a nice to have. Listen, I love all of that stuff too, but it's actually your spiritual practice. It's actually helping you live in alignment so you can fulfill your dharma, so you can live a life of meaning, pleasure, and joy. And we get to do all of it, right? So even though when we talk about things like body, mind, and spirit, like this holistic approach, I even don't think our language really encompasses it enough, that it's not body, mind, and spirit, it's one. And everything you do is going to affect all parts of you. It's going to affect you as a whole. So I will give you another example. Within Ayurveda, as you know, digestion is probably very important. It's believed that food is medicine. What we eat will actually heal us. It's going to strengthen us or it's going to weaken us. I love to get away from good or bad, right or wrong. It's simply, do you feel better or do you feel worse? Do you feel closer to your higher self or do you feel further away from that version of you? But digestion is very important and food is important. But it's not just what you eat that is important. It's everything that comes into your consciousness is going to have an impact on your overall health. So that's what you see on social media, the news that you're watching, the conversations that you're having, your relationships, your career. That's all going to impact your health. And I always like to give the example. I don't watch a ton of TV, but sometimes when I do, I will get a little hooked. And I remember about 2 years ago, I was watching Handmaid's Tale. I don't know if anybody has watched this. Complete nervous system disruption there, right? And I'd be watching it before bed. Then I wouldn't be able to go to bed. My heart would be racing, like my mind would be replaying, all of the dialogue. And it's like my body couldn't digest Handmaid's Tale. So I eventually had to stop watching it. But we have to start seeing how are we living and how is that affecting our overall well-being. So Ayurveda will take everything into account. And again, if you have any questions, please type them on in the community. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how Ayurveda views the world. Now I know I'm covering a lot and covering so much content on an Instagram isn't always easy. I don't think Instagram's the correct platform for that, but I just wanted to give you an overview, especially if you've been in my community and you've heard me talk about it. And of course, my Divine Feminine program, Radiant Goddess, Divine Feminine Ayurveda, is currently open for enrollment. It's going to be closing on Thursday evening for enrollment, but if you want to learn more and if you want me to help you really understand, really apply practices and principles so you can feel healthy, radiant, and divine, you'll definitely want to check that out, jump in there. The link is in my bio. So Ayurveda views the world. The lens in which Ayurveda will see the world is through the 5 elements. We've got ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So you can think, and I like to think, so if there's this goddess and she has this big cauldron, right? And she wants to make Nina or she wants to make Josephina. It's going to be a little bit of earth, a little bit of air, a little bit of ether, and fire and water, and then out comes you, right? So you're made of 5 elements, but so isn't everything else. As far as our food, we can think of the weather, the seasons as being a combination of the 5 elements. So that's really the view of how Ayurveda sees the world. Now, we also have these doshas, and we can think of these as like elemental archetypes. So if you've heard of a dosha, you can put 1 maybe in the comments. If you've never heard of a dosha, maybe put 2. So doshas are Ayurvedic archetypes that really signify like your mind-body type. So there's 3 of them. And we have Vata, which is air and ether, and Pitta, which is fire, a little bit of water, and then we have Kapha, which is going to be water and earth. Now we all have a combination of doshas, and often when we're born, we will have one that really we can say it's our original constitution, right? But then as we go through life and, due to different stress factors, due to how we live, how we eat, what climate we're in, our doshas start to get a little bit out of whack. So within Ayurveda, we start to understand our symptoms based on their doshic qualities. So for example, Vata is air and ether. And I know I'm giving you a lot, so remember we go much deeper into this in Radiant Goddess. But Vata is air and ether. So what are those qualities? Air and ether. It's like dry, cold, mobile, rough. Now, when we have symptoms that are dry, cold, mobile, rough, that might manifest as anxiety, right? There's like this dryness, it's rough, things are animating, but it's also constipation, dry skin. It could be this sense of fear. So we have these Vata imbalances. Or for Pitta, which is fire and water, Pitta will manifest as, when imbalanced, as like inflammation. It could be the rosacea, it could be red skin, it could be anger, irritability. We even see this in our language, like, oh, I was so mad I got red in the face, or she's just really hot-blooded, right? It's kind of like this Pitta qualities. And then Kapha, as an imbalance, which is water and earth, could be like maybe weight gain, water retention, cystic acne, lethargy, maybe depression. It's not moving. It's kind of like walking, we say, oh, I felt like I was walking through water. So these are the imbalances, and that's what we look to treat, but we can understand how to treat the imbalances based on the quality. So if we're experiencing vata imbalances, which were, again, maybe we can think of like dryness, which could manifest as constipation, maybe like vaginal dryness, it could manifest as fine lines. We're gonna wanna add juiciness, right, to our diet. So instead of eating toast, crackers, popcorn, which used to be my favorites as somebody who has a vata imbalance, not good because light is going to increase light. We're going to want to add more oils, more softness, root vegetables with ghee, coconut oil. We're going to do abhyanga, which is self-massage with oil. We want to add back in some of that moisture. Now with pitta, if I'm feeling really kind of feisty and inflamed and I'm kind of pissed off at everyone, I might want to have a spicy margarita and some nachos, but no, I want to cool it down. I want to have maybe more like melons, cilantro, mint, a nice salad, but I want to cool it down more. And then with kapha, the same way. If I'm feeling heavy, lethargic, if I feel this sense of ennui, I'm not going to want to sit in front of the TV eating mac and cheese, but I'm going to want something more energizing. Thinking like a carrot ginger soup, something warm that I can digest that gets me up. So within Ayurveda, like increases like and opposite balance. And I know this might seem a little complicated. I promise you it gets really easy. But it does require self-awareness where there's not this one size fits all approach because we are all different ages, we have different heritages, we live in different climates. So it's understanding, how am I feeling today? So what sort of, what does that represent from like a doshic imbalance? Then how can I fix you? So it's giving you back the power to feel your very best because nobody is going to know your body better than you. Not a doctor, not a coach, nobody. So it's really taking back that sense of accountability and learning how to apply these beautiful principles to your life. So that's just kind of an overview of the doshas. Now, I used to have a dosha assessment, and I just like to share this because everyone's always like, where's my dosha quiz? Where's the dosha quiz assessment where you go through and you say, my hair color is this, my skin is this, my digestion is like this, I eliminate, and I got rid of it. And that's because you don't need to identify with your dosha. You don't need to walk around saying, I'm so vata, I'm so pitta, I'm so kapha. Right? Nobody would do that in India. And actually dosha translates to that which is faulty. So we don't want to identify with our dosha, but we want to understand our symptoms in terms of what needs to be balanced. So I know we all like those quizzes, but I got rid of that because I'd rather you understand how the doshas manifest in your body because you are always in flux. And especially as I'm sure many of you are women and we are always changing. We're like the moon. We're like a different woman every day. So it's less important to put ourselves in this doshic box and more important to understand what it is that we are experiencing at any given moment so we can feel better. So hopefully that makes sense to folks. Like I said, we go much deeper into this in Radiant Goddess where I'm there to actually help you identify which doshic imbalance your symptoms are manifesting as. So that's really how Ayurveda sees the world. And that's why, I always like to say when I'm at the grocery store and I'm looking at all of the magazines and it's like, lose 10 pounds in 10 days by doing this, or reduce belly fat by this, or get your arms in shape. And it's not one size fits all. We are all uniquely different. Nina, good. I'm glad that makes sense because I know that it can be complicated and I know we love those quizzes, but it's really more important to understand what am I experiencing today? Am I really angry and aggravated? Is there a lot of redness, a lot of inflammation? Or am I kind of just stuck? Am I feeling a little bit low? Is there a lot of water retention? Is there a lot of maybe kind of puffiness? Then we can start to understand what it is that we need to feel better. So that's kind of an overview of the doshas. Now, the other part that I wanted to talk about today, which I find so fascinating, and again, I think a big part of the Ayurveda, what really drew me to it, is that it's not just a physical practice. It's a psycho-spiritual practice as well, too. But when we care for the physical body, and I do believe that feminine spirituality really begins in the body. We're not here to try to transcend anything. We are finding the sacred and holy in the everyday. Because, if you think about it, for women, we give birth, we tend to the dying, we like to get our hands all mucky in the dirt, creating gardens. So our spirituality is right here, right now, in this earthly realm, and it really starts with how we care for our body. Now, in Ayurveda, there's the 4 phases of life, and these are the 4 ashramas. And these are the different phases we go through at approximately different ages. So I wanted to share these because I think that this is really going to be eye-opening for many of you. Now, the first phase, the brahmacharya phase, and this is the phase of the student. And we can think of this from about 1 to 25 years old. And this is the phase where we're just trying to figure things out. Like, we're trying to figure out our place in the world, how to survive in the world. We're learning like what is meaningful. We're creating our value system. So this is the student phase where we're really trying to figure out, how do I want to exist in the world? Like, what's my dharma? How do I interact with the world? And that's roughly, and these are all rough estimates, that's roughly from 1 to 25. And then from 25 to 50, we enter the grahasta phase. And this is the household phase. And this is like, we're all about like creating. Our energy is very external focused. So it's like maybe we're building our career. We might be getting into relationships or marriage. We might be creating a family. So we're very focused kind of on the career. We need a house to put our family. We need a place to live. It's very external focused. And this is like a fiery time. So actually where the brahmacharya, that first phase, we could think of that if a dosha would be like a kapha time. It's a time of building. And then that grahasta, the householder time, is like a pitta time. It's fiery. We're getting a lot done. And, I don't know about you, but when I was in my 30s, working full-time at a software company, I was creating a retail store with my ex-husband at the time, had 2 babies, doing all that stuff. Can't really imagine you really doing that stuff now, but we've got a lot of energy, right? And even the word grahasta, it's like we're being in the grip of it. We're in the thick of it. And then we've got vanaprastha, and that's 50 to 75. And we can think of this as like the forest dweller phase, right? And there's this innate drive that we want to be a little bit less in the thick of it, and we want to start coming back to ourselves, right? We start to want to take a more spiritual approach. We're starting to get more interested in spirituality. So we would think the forest dweller phase is almost like having a foot in the mundane. And by the mundane, I don't mean boring, but like a foot in the earthly realm, and then a foot in the more spiritual realm. So I like to think of it as like the priestess energy, that we're going from this mother phase and the grahasta, and this is whether you have children or not, but the mother phase is very much outward energy, nurturing, caring, outward, to we're starting to go into more of the priestess phase, where we're starting to turn inward, be focused more on our spiritual pursuits. So that's the vanaprastha phase. And then the last one is sannyasa, and that's 75 to 100. And this is kind of like the monk or the renunciate, where we're starting to let go of our earthly attachments and we're seeking spiritual liberation. So that would be moksha. Moksha is spiritual liberation. Now, what I am mostly focused on in both my life and the lives of the women in my community, my students and clients, is kind of that transition from the grahasta to the vanaprastha. Now, I believe I will be 49 at the beginning of August, so, kind of going through these hormonal shifts. But I really believe that often so many women have these big, hormonal imbalances at this age is because our body and mind want to start spending more time in the forest, but yet we are still in the thick of it. So our body and mind need to slow down. We don't have the same estrogen and progesterone, so they're starting to decline. They've started to decline since 35, and that's okay. I do not believe you are broken. I don't believe your body needs to be fixed. I don't believe your hormones need to be fixed, but your life needs to be fixed to reflect this new body chemistry. Now, we do go more into hormones in Radiant Goddess, but let me kind of leave you with this. What if you had a perfect amount of estrogen and progesterone to get through, but it was just the lifestyle that was still operating at this really high capacity where you needed more? Now, again, we can think like, oh, my body is broken. I still want to operate at that high capacity. Or you could be thinking, oh, this is my body telling me it's time to turn inward. It's time to slow it down. Not because I'm getting old and need to slow it down, but it's because I have wisdom from a life well lived that I need to start considering. I need to start sharing with others. So it's not like things are breaking, we need to move down. It's inviting you to experience the world in a new way because you've had a life well lived. It's like, okay, how do we care for our bodies now? And that's that sense of, okay, I gotta start minimizing the stressors, right? Because with less estrogen and progesterone, I'm gonna need less cortisol and adrenaline. So I really like to think of it as inviting you into a new way of being, a new way of experiencing the world. And of course, yes, there are beautiful self-care practices like nutrition, lifestyle practices that will help to minimize the symptoms. But again, we got to think of it's a transition time, and we don't really think about the transitions that much in our culture. It's like we want to do what we want to do, but again, we are part of nature. You know, we don't tell the leaves, do not fall in October and November. I like you the way you are, right? We need to adhere to this life-death life cycle. And yes, we still want to be vital and we still want to be radiant. Trust me, I still want to be very vital. I still want to be radiant. I still want to have great sex. And I can honor my body's need to slow down. I can honor this innate psychic impulse I have to turn inward, to connect with my spirituality more. Now, problem happens, and maybe some of this will resonate. I have many women who are like, well, I would love to dive all into that forest dweller phase, but I've got kids living at home. I've got aging parents. I've got bills to pay. I've got a job. Totally get it. I've got 2 teenagers as well. I've got parents that live, right down the road. I've got a sick dog. So sometimes it feels like, okay, I want to slow down, but I think my responsibilities have just doubled. So what do we do? So that is when we have to double down on self-care. So if you are familiar with Ayurveda, you know that one of the key components is dinacharya. That's your daily routine. And I love to think of it as not just a checklist that I like the bro wellness hacks where we're checking things off a list, but you can think of dinacharya as prioritizing what's most important. And it really represents how you're going to live through the world, what your proclamation of your life is going to be. And I know that could sound really deep, but think about it. How you start your day is probably going to be pretty indicative of how your day is going to go, how your week is going to go, and how your life. So your daily routine really starts to represent how you want to live your life. And within dinacharya, we have these spots where we can dedicate to our spiritual practices. We can dedicate to protecting our consciousness. And this is what we need. We need to make sure that we are finding time to care for our body, to care for our mind and spirit. So then for the rest of the day, we can deal with the karma of our lives. So Ayurveda has this really beautiful system of making sure that yes, we can still have the kids, have the partner, work, but yet we can also make sure that we are prioritizing our spirit, our body, so we can feel good and we can really be intentional with the way that we show up in our lives. So I know I just said a lot, so I just want to pause for a moment and just see if anybody has any questions. All right, so the other thing I'd like to say about the phases of life, which I find really, really interesting. So if we look at the 4 phases of life, is the first 2 phases, that brahmacharya and grahastha, they're very much external focused, right? And then the second 2 phases, the vanaprastha and sannyasa, they become more inner focused, right? And I think that this is a really beautiful time. And I think midlife gets a pretty bad rap, right? We often think of it as a time of decline. I want you to think of it as a time of awakening. And Carl Jung, who the famed Swiss psychoanalyst, he has this beautiful quote. He says, life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you're just doing research. And so what does he mean by that? It means we're just trying to survive that first half of life, right? We're trying to get along with whatever family we find ourselves in. We're trying to, figure out who we are in the context of our career, in our relationships, very much external focused. But then midlife, hopefully some things maybe have quieted down. There's this drive like, who am I really? What turns me on? What lights me up? So it's a whole nother journey. It's a journey inward. And this is aligned, and I like with what Carl Jung would teach about as far as like becoming whole, the sense of individuation. This is when we start to do the work. We start to reclaim these parts of ourselves, that you're not just whoever you are in your career. You're not just a mother. You're not just a partner, but you are so much more. So this is the opportunity to find that. And it also aligns with what you just learned in the 4 phases of life. There's a desire to know more about yourself and about the spiritual realm. So midlife isn't a time of decline. It is a time of awakening. And of course, if we really want to awaken, we have to feel good, right? We have to feel good in our bodies. I always like to, not really joking, but telling my clients and students, like sometimes, we want to figure it all out, right? We want to heal the inner child, quiet the inner critic, get right up to the crown chakra and have the sense of clarity. You're not going to be able to do that if you can't get a good night's sleep. You haven't pooped in days. Every time you eat, it just sits in your gut. That's why the spirituality part, we got to deal with the body. We have to have our basic bodily functions down before we can do all of the other, the work that we always want to jump right to. So I think that's like a really important part, that like until we get right in the body, we still have more work to do. Not to say that you can't do both simultaneously, but have you ever tried making skillful decisions when you haven't gotten a good night's sleep, haven't pooped in days, and you can't digest your food? Can't really be done. And this is why, we start with the physical body. And I actually believe that, whenever we're dealing with like mental ailments, as far as like anxiety, depression, fear, it's one of the first things, the non-negotiables are get out in the morning and see some sunlight, take a walk, eat healthier foods, seasonal, fresh, and local. That is really going to change our entire experience. So that's the overview of Ayurveda and the 4 phases of life. And as I said, we go deep into all of this in Radiant Goddess. This is my 10-week Divine Feminine Ayurveda program. Doors are currently open, but they are going to close on Thursday night. So if you would like to check that out, we would love to have you. You can learn more with the link in my bio. I also have a really fantastic bonus right now. So if you enroll by 10 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, we were talking about the forest dweller, the phase of the priestess. I have a really great masterclass, Everyday Priestess, where I am going to tell you how you can really tap into this priestess energy, priestess power, even with the busyness of everyday life. So even with the kids, the finances, the work, because it can be done. And that's what I believe that we're really being called to do. And that will also come with the 7-day video series, a daily devotion practice, where I will walk you through a morning practice of meditation, gratitude, and prayer. And the prayer is to your higher power, whoever that is for you. This is not a dogmatic program of what you need to do. It's really, how do you want to be? Who do you want to become? How do you want to evolve? So would love for you to check that out. And let's see what else. I'm just going to check my notes, make sure I covered everything I said I was going to cover. Oh yeah, the other important point as well too is I really consider Ayurveda to be the OG of hormone regulation and nervous system regulation. And I feel like those words are, thrown around a lot, especially here on social media, or maybe that's just my feed. But Ayurveda is not about, it's not that these things are not separate, your hormones, your nervous system, and how you're feeling. Well, what we're doing is creating this environment where we manage our stress, where we eat healthy foods, where we can have our hormones all working interdependently together, because it's not just we need to fix estrogen and progesterone. It's, we need to manage our cortisol. We need to manage our adrenaline. We also have to look at insulin and leptin and melatonin. It's like a hormonal soup. So it's not like we just need to fix 1 or 2 things. We have to create the conditions where all of our hormones work together. And that's really what Ayurveda does through dinacharya, through food, lifestyle, sacred practices, and rituals. It is getting our body right aligned. And when we do that, when we do all of that, we also have a regulated nervous system because we have prioritized what it is that we need to feel better. So I just wanted to leave off with that. So please let me know if you have any questions at all. You can check out Radiant Goddess. We start on July 11th, although there is a welcome party on July 2nd. Doors are going to close on Thursday evening. And if you get in tonight, you also get Everyday Priestess and the 7-day devotion video series. And there is already a fantastic community enrolled, and we are waiting for you on the inside. So would love to see you there. All right, beautiful ones. Well, thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions after this, please, you can go into my DMs, leave a comment, and I will get back to you. All right, be well, beautiful ones.